Hello, my name is Diane, and today I want to talk about all the books I read in September. September was not a great reading month for me, but it was pretty much on par with August, so it's fine, I guess. I have 5 books to talk about today. 2 of those books were DNFs, 2 of them were just okay, and then one of them is not a new favorite, but I liked it. So let's start with the DNFs and we'll work our way up. The first book I DNF'd is Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb. This is the story of a dragon who is the last male of his kind, and he needs to go through the veil to save his species, and he needs to convince this thief character to help him in some way, manipulate them to do what he needs done. I don't know, I didn't get far enough to know exactly what he needed from them, but I just wasn't really that captivated by the writing style, and I didn't really care about the character. It's also written in first person, which I found kind of odd. I don't know, it's just, I don't read a lot of first person, and it has to be like very specific for it to work for me, and it just wasn't working for me in this. I don't know, I wasn't clicking with the writing style. I didn't care about the main characters. So I gave up because I didn't want to spend time hoping that it got better. It might have, but I don't know. I didn't care enough to find out. So that was kind of disappointing because I was looking forward to this. This one did come out this year. So it's a newer release. I haven't really heard much about it. I haven't really looked for much other feedback about it, to be honest. So I don't know how well this was received. I'm sure this would work much better for someone else, but it just wasn't for me. The other book I DNF'd was The Keeper's Six by Kate Elliott. This is now the second Kate Elliott that I've DNF'd, so I'm thinking her writing style is just not for me. I have heard really good things about her in general, so I'm sure this story would work a lot better for someone else. This is a shorter novel about a mother who gets a phone call from her son that he's in trouble. She knows he's in some kind of danger, and she springs into action to go and save him. I liked that this features older characters. She has to get her friends back together. There's clearly a lot of tension there. Something has happened in their past. They got in trouble for it. She's not supposed to be going to the places she's going because of whatever happened. I never found out what happened. I read about a third of this, and I just didn't feel like anything that interesting for me was going on. It felt like the conflicts that had come up were being resolved a little too tidily. It seemed like things were coming very easily to her, and that's just not something that I really enjoy, where the main character is just kind of cruising through. I like there to be a little bit more tension, and the sense of danger that we had right off the bat when the story started was not long lived at all. So I'm sure it would have been interesting to find out what actually happened with her and her group, the other side characters, but they weren't really in that much for the first third of the book. So I didn't really get to find out too much about them. I didn't really understand their relationship that well. And it just felt like it was taking too long for things to really get going, and the tension had already diffused by the point that I stopped reading. So I don't know, it just wasn't doing a whole lot for me, and I didn't really want to stick it out, even though it is a shorter read. I felt like I had already read enough to get an idea that it just wasn't for me. For the books that I did finish, I don't really think any of these are bad. I didn't dislike any of them. I think I sounded a little negative when I first said they were just okay, but they kind of were just okay. None of these were really standouts. They were good. I enjoyed them. I'm glad I read them. But these definitely aren't new favorites for me. The first of these is Breaking Day by Adam Oyebanji. This is a debut sci-fi story about a character who is on board a spaceship, and they're about to enter the planet that they were sent to. And as they're approaching the day that they're going to arrive at their destination, he sees a girl outside of the ship with no spacesuit on. She's just outside in space, and nobody else can see her. He has no idea what it means or who she is, and he sets off trying to figure this out. This was just fine. It read a lot younger than I had expected, which was my main problem with it. I thought it was going to be a darker mystery, maybe a little more horror leaning, or at least like a thriller feeling. And I just didn't really get any of that with it. I never really clicked with the main characters, which is also a big problem for me. If I don't connect with the main character, I'm not going to connect with the story that much. That's just me as a reader, no matter how interesting the mystery is. And the mystery just felt like you get little pieces of it, and it does build as the story goes. So there's really nothing inherently wrong there, but it just felt like it was taking too long for all the pieces to start building up for our main character to really get deep into whatever this mystery was. But I think my biggest problem with it was just the tone of it, just read younger than I expected. I think this would be suitable for a young adult audience or just someone newer to the sci-fi genre who's maybe a little intimidated and doesn't want anything too dry. I think this would work much better for someone who's looking for something like that. That's just not what I was looking for. I wanted something a little more tense, a little bit darker, and that's what I had expected with the synopsis, that there's some girl outside and nobody else can see her. Sounds very spooky and mysterious, but it wasn't quite as spooky and mysterious as I was looking for. So this one was fine, a good debut, maybe a better story for a different sci-fi reader, but that's just not what I look for in my sci-fi, so this one was just fine. The next book I read was The Mystery at Dunvegan Castle by T.L. Huchu, and this is the third installment in the Edinburgh Nights series. I liked this story. I don't think any of the books in this series have really been favorites for me, but I've definitely enjoyed them all. I really like the main character, Ropa. I like seeing the story from her perspective and hearing her narrative voice, and I've just enjoyed going on these adventures with her and solving mysteries and seeing her grow up along the way. She is still a pretty young character, and she is solving some pretty big mysteries in these books, but I have a lot of fun with them. I just think they're a good time to read, to get into this alternate world and see Ropa try and figure out what's going on. She can talk to ghosts. She has a musical instrument that helps her along with that. That I think is very interesting. I just think it's a very unique story, and I think that they are well written, even if they're not standout all-time favorites for me. I still have a good time whenever I read these stories. I know there is going to be at least one more installment, so I'll be looking forward to that and seeing where Ropa's story takes her next. But overall, I've just been enjoying the series in general, and I did like this book. Just, again, not really a standout for me. And the final book, which, not a new favorite, but my favorite of the month, was Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card. This is the sequel to Ender's Game. It takes place about 3,000 years after the end of Ender's Game, although Ender is still alive. He's, I think, about 30 in this, because he's been traveling around. Time works differently. I don't know. He's still alive and well, but he's met this new race. Humans have encountered a new race, and they're trying to learn about them, but also trying to be a bit cautious because of everything that happened in Ender's Game. They don't want to repeat the mistakes of their past, but they do still want information and are trying to figure how to coexist with them in a way that would work for everybody while they can learn about them without anything bad happening. Ender, of course, ends up in the middle of all of this. He is quite well known at this point. And I just like Ender as a character. I think this world is very interesting. I think the way Orson Scott Card explores this world is very interesting and looks at, there's a lot of conversation about humanity, and the interspecies relationship is a big thing in this story. So there's not really a lot of action going on here. There is some intrigue and mystery happening. The story as a whole felt much more like it was focused on these two groups encountering one another and interacting with one another for the first time, or pretty early on in their relationship anyway. think this has a lot of interesting world building and character development without having to do anything big or over the top to show it. And I just think they're really interesting stories they're a little more subtle in their approach. I wouldn't call them dry, but they're subtle. I don't know. I like them. I'm going to continue with this series. I already have the next book, which is Xenocide. I'm planning to read the entire Ender Saga until I decide I don't like it, but I'm not anticipating that based on this book, but we'll see. So that's everything I read in September. Not too much. Nothing really to rave about, unfortunately, but I had a pretty good reading month. These are all new releases that I've been looking forward to, and again, a series that I've been meaning to get back to since I finished Ender's Game and really enjoyed that. So it was good to get some more new releases that I've been looking forward to all year and finally get around to reading them. So even though I didn't love everything I read, I am glad that I read everything I read. Hopefully you had a better reading month than I did. Let me know what your favorite read of the month was. That's all for me today. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time.